So very good morning again. I'm really delighted to have four very distinguished panelists. And just quickly, although Phil has introduced them, let me introduce them again. Professor Suzanne Fortier, Principal and Vice-Chancellor of McGill University. Professor Lino Guzzella, the President of ETH Zürich. Dr. Hsiao-Wuen, he has actually a long list of titles. He is actually Corporate Vice President of Microsoft. He is the, let me get this right, Managing Director of Microsoft Asia and Chairman of Microsoft Asia-Pacific R&D Group, Dr. Hong. And Professor Ling Jianhua, who is President of Peking University. So this is a discussion session. The theme of this topic is the role of research universities in creating new impact. And there are three broad questions, and you see them actually on the slides. I would not read the questions, but I would like to kickstart the panel. Let me first sort of invite Suzanne just to talk about two of the three. I think we have this time constraint. We have requested our speakers to keep their brief to 7 minutes so that we have more time for question and answer. So I'd like to invite Suzanne to focus on two of the three questions.
Okay,
Suzanne,
thank
please.
you. Merci beaucoup et bonjour à vous tous. It's a real pleasure for me to be here because it's my first time, not only in this great university, but in Singapore. I've been in your time zone, though, for a while because before arriving here, I was in Tianjin attending the World Economic Forum, what is often called the Summer Davos. It's actually, the full name is the annual meeting of the new champions. And during that meeting, I was immersed in the world of today, and that is the world of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I know there are still people who are skeptical about this notion that we're entering a Fourth Industrial Revolution. I can tell you that when you're in a meeting like this one, you have no doubt that not only it's coming, it is here right now, the world of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And what is impressive is not only all these disruptive technologies that are the ones that we see in our world today, but also how ill-prepared we are for these technologies entering our worlds and our lives. We are really not equipped with the kind of governance, regulations, ethical thinkings to deal with these very transformative technology. If we're thinking of AI, of course, everybody talks about AI, but also precision medicine, drones, massive amount of data and the flow of data. We haven't figured out how to put in place the kind of governance regulation that will help us have all of those great technology have a positive impact on the world. And so we are facing enormous social disruptions. And I think us as universities have really a mandate, a role, in fact, to be motor of social inclusion through this really big period of disruption. So I'll start with that and then get to the question. I chose the first two. I will put three words in order for us to really have impact with the breakthrough research that we do on our universities. And the three words are flexibility, agility, and awareness. And referring to what I've just said, I think you understand these three words. There's no question, I think we all know that. There's not a single model, there's not a one-size-fits-all. It very much depends when we look at the breakthrough research of in what area, what is the maturity of the sector, the receptor sector, and what is also the particular size of the receptor sector. So we have to be agile and flexible so that what we bring as new discoveries, as new knowledge, can be used in different types of circumstances, in different situations, in different contexts. I'll mention 2 examples from my own institution, but I think you can think of the same type of examples in your own institution. We have in Canada a highly developed aerospace industry, some anchor companies as well as SMEs. They have organization and so on. And for many, many years now, the academic sector has been working very well with the aerospace industry. Models have been well developed, and we have a great relationship. And it's not only in research, it's also in training of the next generation of workers in this industry. So that works very well. We've got everything figured pretty much well on the best practice to work together. Another sector for us is the brain. We do a lot of work on brain research at McGill. And here, as you probably know, the industry is facing enormous risk. Many have attempted to bring to market drugs for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. Most of those have failed. We have a real problem. And we have really not made the advances that we need for the millions of people who are suffering from these diseases. We can hardly diagnose the disease early enough to intervene. And once we do, we don't have anything to offer. So we've adopted a model of complete open science. We share everything. So we share the data, the images, the biobanks, even data from experiments that did not support the hypothesis. So we share everything. The notion we have is that it is so important to make advances in this area that we need to have a completely open environment where researchers around the world will share their results so that we can make the advance we need. So obviously, the model with industry is very different there. They are part of it, and at the appropriate time, they may jump in and grab some IP, but not early on. They can't, and they've tried in the past and know that that's not working well. So I think this is very contrast, 2 very different examples. Of course, a lot of relationships with industry are of the type that we call transactional partnerships, so research contracts, one researcher with one industry. Increasingly, we're moving to much broader and longer partnerships, several universities with several companies working together. Our government has very much supported that model in doing 2 things. One, which is pretty unusual, which is massive, fairly large investment in fundamental research. So that they're supporting, in our last budget, a very, very important increase in the support of our granting agencies, and also very important investments in key areas of fundamental research. On the other hand, the government is also supporting the business-led creation of what they call superclusters. And the notion is that with these initiatives, we can create an ecosystem where people will work together. Now, I'll move briefly to the second question. What are the threats coming from established industry? I must say that we hadn't seen too many threats so far in Canada because we've tried to build this ecosystem where universities and the companies and other sector, could be the government sector, work together. Recently, we've seen some of these threats, and they're coming because of the war for talents in particular area. AI and robotics are the 2 that comes to mind instantly. There's not sufficient people right now who are trained in these areas to satisfy the need of the private sector, and so they're coming to our universities to get some of our professors to take jobs in their company. We've tried to find a sweet spot, something that we can live with, which is to share with industry. We have professors who are 50% of their time with industry, 50% of their time with us. It's not ideal, but it's better for us than having 0% of our professors. And we have to keep in mind that if our professors are all moving to the private sector, the problem will amplify because there will be nobody to teach those people we need in the pipeline to be the ones who will be hired in the industry. So we've got to be working together there to make sure that we take care not only of today's needs, but much longer time need. I think I mentioned a few times an ecosystem, and I think that is what we need to create. And I would like to say something important here, I believe it is, that the students have to be right in the middle of this ecosystem. We must always think about them as playing a very, very important part. I have the pleasure and the privilege of seeing the students perfectly understanding the world in which we live, the kind of contribution that needs to be made. The fact that it's not the case that you can only think about the technology. You have to think also very early on about the social impact, the social disruptions. Our students are doing that. I can tell you many examples from my university, but since I've been here for actually less than a day, I can tell you 2 examples from this great university. A student that I met at lunch who's doing a very interesting program of studies, mechanical engineering and philosophy. I found that really inspiring. And then in the afternoon, yesterday, I went on the tour and met this group of students or former students who are doing a project, a startup company for water filtration, portable water filtration that looks like a bicycle pump to bring in parts of the country where there's still in part of the world where there are still huge problems in getting access to clean water. This is what our students are doing today on our campuses, and we need to really invest in them and have confidence in their leadership. And I'll end with one thing, and it is a thought that is left to us in the world by a great professor at Harvard University, who's actually a graduate of my own university, Steven Pinker. It's rare for university professors to have bestsellers, but he does have one. It's called Enlightenment Now. And in his book, Professor Pinker makes a very strong case for the fact that there's never been a better time nor a more important time for knowledge to contribute to the betterment of humankind. And he leaves us with a very positive outlook on the future. And I think us in our universities have this great responsibility and mandate to build on a positive and optimistic world, view of the world, because we are given the great privilege of working in advancing knowledge and in making sure that that knowledge is being used in the world.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to invite Lino to have his brief.
So it's 47. I'll try to stop before 40. First of all, I'd like to congratulate and compliment you, Eng Chye, and of course the Times Higher Education for providing us this opportunity here to meet together in this fantastic environment. Thanks a lot for that. I'll focus on question number 1 and 3. If they come up again, you can read them out. The first one is, how can we translate groundbreaking knowledge into real-world impact? I mean, the key vector are people. It's always about people. We need to provide our graduates, our students, our faculty with the newest knowledge. We need to provide them with the ability to think critically and creatively. And of course, we need to give them the necessary entrepreneurial skills. This is a very important part, translating it by people. Then Brian mentioned it, Brian Schmidt, before. There is a gap, of course, between science and economy, between business and universities. This is okay. This is absolutely correct that this gap is there. We need to provide instruments and tools how to bridge this gap. Let me give you an example how we do this at ETH. Hans-Jörg Wies, one of our alumni, donated a very substantial fund, sum of money, to create an institute that focuses only on that. So people can apply there in this Wies Institute, and if the idea is found to be okay for that purpose by a committee of people who are very, very expert and knowledgeable in that, then they get support, being it money, being in its space, being in it advice, concrete tools. And the third point, how you can achieve this translation is, of course, by encouraging that across the university itself. I don't know how it is in other universities, but in our university, sometimes I experience the fact that people from outside know better what's going on inside than the people inside the university itself. So fostering, encouraging dialogue among people inside the university, across boundaries, across institutes and disciplines, is something that helps a lot. Then there is a second aspect of this discussion, at least in the European setting, there is sometimes it's a little bit considered as not being academic enough to work with industry, you know, as a debasing yourself. And there we need to make sure that this doesn't be the case. And how do we do that? By having proper governance rules and being transparent. It's absolutely important that whatever you do when you work with the outside world, you do it in a transparent way. All donation contracts at ETH need to, for instance, to be visible to journalists, to media. We insist on that we can disclose the content of all these contracts. Okay, let's go to the third question I'd like to talk a little bit more about. How do we foster a culture of innovation? Again, people, for me, they're always in the center, and I believe it starts all in undergraduate education. Mm-hmm. So if you build up programs for PhD students or so, I believe it's too late. You should really talk to your the first freshman students, the undergrad people. How do we do that at ETH? We have a rich tradition since many years, 20 years or so, of project-based learning. I believe that projects are the defining factor where students from various disciplines can come together, put together their creativity and ideas, and by that learning to become entrepreneurial, innovative. A second approach that we have developed more recently with the addition of a new faculty member in particular is what we call constructive failure. To fail is more important than to succeed, because in success you learn usually very little, but in failure you learn a lot. And we try to formalize this process by bringing students in a friendly environment, of course in a safe environment, to the breaking point where they fail. And we provide an environment where they can learn from their failures so that they really grow in personality, but also, of course, in technical skills. Concrete example, some years ago we created what we call the ETH week. 1 week before the semester starts, students from all disciplines, all departments, all faculties come together and work on a joint theme, like food, like manufacturing, like energy, a concrete problem, a challenge that we give to them. And in a week-long setting, in groups of 20, they develop crazy ideas. Not all of these ideas are viable and very useful, but that's not the point. The point is they learn how to interact in a diverse environment, they learn how to interact, how to solve problems where there is no concrete solution, which is exactly the spirit, as you mentioned, Brian, of the Humboldtian approach to be a research-based teaching universities. Because if you teach your students how to solve research problems, which have no answer yet, you teach them how to solve the coming problems of the world. Second, again, you cannot move cats, but you can move around food. So what you do is you have resources available. Yeah. Scholarships, resources for low-risk projects. We provide space. Space is another issue which is very, very difficult at many universities. So we have what we call the IE labs, the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Labs, where we provide free space to students who want to try out their crazy ideas. We give out fellowships, etc. And then the world ecosystem, Suzanne, I agree completely with you. We have created around ETH an ecosystem of venture capital opportunities. We have our own foundation that hands out venture capital, but of course we have a network, being it rich individuals or institutions that have provided venture capital. Summarizing, you can do a lot from the top down, but from the top down you can't solve concrete problems. What you can do from top down is instill values, give general guidance. What has to come bottom up is the concrete solution, is the real idea, is the breakthrough itself, and therefore we must, as university leaders, make sure that we have this constant dialogue between top-down ideas and bottom-up realization that plays well. And this, I believe, is one of the most important tasks of us as university leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lino. I like your phrase on constructive failure. Hsiao-Wuen, please.
Thank you. So I feel very honored to be with the three distinguished presidents on this panel. I work in industry, also make my work sort of unique in this section. So I'm going to kind of answer this question from two perspectives. One is from Microsoft, particularly we have research, we participate in the fundamental research, and also my suggestion to universities. So the first question I will pick is how can the leading research institute translate groundbreaking knowledge into real world impact? In Microsoft, we certainly have the advantage. We are a commercial company. But even for our research, we have two channels, internal and external. So internal, we have when people talk about R&D in any company, typically you have a big D doing the product and a small R, in terms of number of people. Because research, you never about putting a lot of people. You just need a base idea. So internally, we call technology transfer, or you call the translate. And Microsoft, I think, even though people know Microsoft is a big company, we actually only have two product groups. One is called experience and devices, which kind of help people on the productivity, which people know our traditional Windows and Office 365, helping on in individual organization productivity. And the other one is particularly important today to empower the company, organization, or even university to do digital transformation. We call them cloud and AI. And nowadays, these two terms are actually been the talk about in all over the place, including academics. External, the research, typically the company's R&D people think is only facing inside. But I think the Microsoft research, we particularly from day one, we actually have a lot of the externally working with our partner and doing the innovation together. Academics, university is really the one we always work together. This is why we participate in all this academic event, research, or education. And for that, we kind of push the open, share, the fundamental research. And I think we all know, I think you all know, how important to look further by actually sitting on the shoulder of giants. And recently, particularly in AI, the focus on the vertical innovation and also the data, it's also necessary for Microsoft to reach out with our partner in different verticals, like manufacturing, retail, government, education, finance service. And because even though we can develop all the fancy algorithms, all the fancy technology, but without data, without domain knowledge, we cannot really make the last mile innovation. So you can see Microsoft actually been more reaching out and not doing everything on our own. So we as a platform company, it's important for us to really work with the vertical leader to actually do the last mile innovation. And I think we also view the combination of our platform technology with the partners' domain knowledge and data are necessary and the sufficient condition for us to make the real world impact. For my suggestion to university, actually, I know that there are discussions about putting university compete with the industry in talent or in the real world impact. But I want to really say this out aloud. I will actually say more to the press. Is like the reason we can enjoy the booming in AI, it's because the stamina and the open research been done in mostly academic in the last 60 plus years. Yeah. So that's really very important. I think particularly from the company like Microsoft, we invest in AI for less than 30 years. In the industry, we started doing AI in 1991. The industry is already unheard of. But before that, the academic. So this is just one example to remind people how important to support the fundamental research. So I want to say this loud. That's really, particularly for the press. A lot of press probably think that AI technology been emerged in the recent year. No, at least going through the 60 plus years. And then in the area, I would think the university has a particular opportunity to do real world impact. I would suggest for two areas. One is this open data policy initiative. When I say open data, it's particularly the government. I think the many government, which is, I think including Singapore government, US government, and many other governments, all the data be collected by public money. And this is the national security related, will be open to do research to actually make more innovation. And then that is the area, the public sector, particularly university, mostly in public sector funded by government money, that really can push the innovation in many, many places. The geodata, the climate, transportation, etc. Those are areas I can see university and government lead, not actually industry. And the other one is education. I think the university, the function is education. I think now with the tech, AI, and big data, there's a plenty of opportunity. I think this MOOC, flip classroom, I think it's an opportunity for there's a lot of work can be done to provide personalized learning and also affordable personalized learning for everyone. And the other thing also, Microsoft also very honored to contribute using our Microsoft academic grant, means to make everything university do in research and education totally data-driven. And I think the Microsoft Academic Search and Academic Grant, just some tool can really, we are so glad to actually work with the partner all over the world, including the US. I mean, I think at least in the following area, assess the research impact, selecting research direction, finding faculty and collaborator, and most importantly, fostering cross-disciplinary research. And the second question I was going to address is what are the threats coming from established industry in terms of investment needs. So first I talk about Microsoft. So talent competition is all over the place, but for university, also for industry. How Microsoft look at this? I mean, people doing R&D or university, the biggest asset is our people. So we think how we actually address this, the competition will always be there. I think whether it's nowadays AI, big data, I mean, tomorrow will be another hard area. We think it's important for our employees to feel they have an opportunity to learn. So now we talk about this lifelong learning. I think for everyone, and then particularly high-tech industry, the stuff we learned 10 years ago today are outdated. How do we actually have ability learning to learn, and then so be able to do lifelong learning? And I think it's important. While most people come to a company like Microsoft, you think you need to contribute, but they also need to feel they can learn. And then also on top of that, I think Microsoft view also with that people to feel they can build a career in Microsoft. And I'm with Microsoft for almost 25 years. In our industry, it's almost unheard of, right? The people, I mean, particularly Silicon Valley or in China, 中关村 culture, people actually often jump ship. And I think, but it's important, I think, for people doing technology development, R&D, to feel they can build a long-term career in a company. And then the other thing also, the talent pipeline. This is why we're working with the university, I mean, the internship program, fellowship program, or even joining PhD degree. Those are important for a company to build their own pipeline. And I think they can always actually hire the best talent when they need. And last but not least, the diversity and inclusion. I mean, particularly in our industry, on gender, racial, and all kinds of the diversity. We believe that's really how we build a long-term sustainable business for Microsoft. And then we cannot work alone. We need to work with the society, particularly university, to make more progress. For the recommendation for university, I understand university facing, well, university basically doing two things, fundamental research and the education. And then the student always graduate and work for industry or other places. And now we talk about mostly our faculty. And then in AI, I totally understand. But I think the company, I mean, particularly Microsoft, yeah, we hire very few faculty. Mostly we hire students. And then it's important, but it's also important for the company. We also want to really have the conference like this. I mean, we feel kind of very special, mostly our academic people, very few company presence. I think we really want to actually have open letter to more companies should actually participate, working with the university on fundamental research, talent fostering, and even curriculum development. It's very important for companies like Microsoft to work with university to have a sustainable, the three things, like make sure the fundamental research will get advanced, and also the talent, all the talent pipeline, not just for Microsoft, for the entire industry, for the entire society, and also the curriculum for how we should teach for the next generation young leader. And the last, the education. I mean, I really learned a lot, also have my conversation with President Tan, President Lin over the year, how should we combine this technology with the sort of liberal the thinking, and also what's the best education. I see a lot of opportunity, also challenge for university. I mean, how we now with the modern technology, how we can actually build the computational thinking or this AI into not just engineering student, not just STEM the student, also for non-engineering students, right? How should we teach, right? And it's more than just programming, right? The whole thing of like computational logic thinking, and then not to mention add the AI component, and eventually maybe even go to the K-12. And the other thing is with the new media, also technology. Now I think the society seems to be pushed to more extreme because this we get the news and information from this so-called social network. The stuff actually happening in social network like fake news. Fundamentally, I think how we can teach the student has a more critical, independent thinking. Because at the end of the day, I think the people can get their stuff from whatever the place. And then how do they actually have an independent and critical thinking to challenge the status quo and actually come up with the well-rounded the opinion on just about everything. That's really the fundamental way to solve this so-called fake news problem. And then also the last but not least, the lifelong learning, the learning to learn, the ability to actually acquire and learn, and then to even upgrade ourselves. And I think those are really the challenge. I also think it's the opportunity for the particular the university to lead the new round of the transformation.
Thank you very much. It's immensely important, I think, for us to have a perspective from a tech company, particularly the R&D unit of a tech company. And I like, your focus on fundamental research,
Yes.
Which I think it's really the basis of universities, and also your sort of a push for lifelong learning and higher education change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, let me invite Jianhua to give his brief remarks. Jianhua, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think these questions are all very important and very interesting. I'm not going to touch, one by one, but I just want to see from another perspective of Chinese university. Chinese university were founded about 100 years ago, and modern universities. And I think for all of us are facing a big challenge of new technology, like the internet and all this cutting-edge technologies are changing the whole society, changing of the thinking of the people, and also we used to be the sort of monopoly of the knowledge innovation, but no longer we are, and so they are like the industry and the big companies. They are doing a lot of frontier technology development. So there's, I think for a university, we need to think, do we need to really seriously thinking about change ourselves? So that is the questions we are facing. the key word in my mind is there are a lot of boundaries. So I think in the future we need to break the boundaries of the university or within the university as well. So the university, we used to, for example, have the schools and the department. They are, depend really on this traditional disciplines, chemistry, physics, and mathematics, and all those, and so on. But for the new generation, I think the knowledge they need to be interdisciplinary, or should combine those knowledge, those disciplines, in order to give them a potential to be more innovative and creative to the student, even to the faculty members. They need to work together with the other field. So break the boundaries is the key, I think, the effort we are making at Peking University. Yeah. So, for example, we are trying to break the boundaries of the university and try to work together with the industry, companies, and also the government, and so to allocate more resources to enhance ourselves the research. We are trying to break the boundaries of the schools and disciplines, and so actually in the past 10 years we initiate more than 10 research institutions, cross-disciplinary institutions, like, for example, the McGill Institute for Brain Sciences, and and also the Biomedical Image Institute, and the Molecular Medicine Institute, and so on and so on. So those institutions in the cutting edge field really bring new ideas, and also brought a sort of cooperation with the companies, and so that make really a lot of change. For the education, we have also doing the very similar things. We are thinking that we need to break the boundaries of the learning and teaching, and let students involve more on one hand to the research field, research group, and also we encourage faculties and the schools, and they create more interdisciplinary undergraduate programs, like the PPE, and also the Chinese classics, Western classics, and those programs are, formed by several schools and departments together. So it's very encouraging to not only to the student, give students more choices, but also to the faculty members. They have the opportunity to work together with the other disciplines. I think these are the major idea.
Thank you.
There are a lot of examples I do not want to go on with, but
thank you very much.
Fundamental.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much, I think, for sharing the need to transform the university. And I personally have seen Chinese universities, but particularly Tsinghua and Beida, being transformed, breaking down boundaries. I think it's one of the hardest things to do, and you managed to do it. So let me also give a sense on what we are doing in NUS. I do not have time to go through 2 questions, so I'll just focus on the last. How has NUS been able to shape the innovation culture? So it happens actually about 20 years ago. We were looking at what's happening in Silicon Valley. We thought that Silicon Valley, that focus on innovation and the excitement and vibrancy, that sort of environment is something that we want to bring to NUS, to Singapore, right? But 20 years ago, Singapore don't have a very entrepreneurial environment. So what we did was, the next best thing is to send or outsource this. So we sent our students to Silicon Valley, starting from 2001. Over the years, we have basically framed a very interesting entrepreneurship program. Now, NUS takes 7,000 students. We are only actually having this program for a special subset or subgroup of these 7,000 students every year. What the students do is that they go for a full year of internship in a startup company in Silicon Valley. And that's what they do in the day. In the evenings, they do technopreneurship courses at our partner universities. And at that time, it was Stanford. Stanford is still our partner university right now. Now, over the last 20 years, Silicon Valley's location now has been increased to over 10 locations across the world. We have 3 in North America, 1 in Silicon Valley, 1 in New York City, 1 in Toronto. We have 4 in Europe, Sweden, Stockholm in Sweden, Lausanne in Switzerland, Munich in Germany, Tel Aviv in Israel. We have 2 locations in China. 1 is in Beijing, and 1 is in Beijing, and 1 is in Shanghai. A 3rd one coming up in Shenzhen, and we will have 1 in Jakarta. Right. Over the last 15 years, we have sent 2,400 students to this so-called NUS Overseas Program, commonly known as NOC, to our students. It has been a very popular program. In fact, many students want to come to NUS because of this program. All right. And we take students from various disciplines, from law, arts and social sciences, to engineering and computing. The initial basis is to bring that entrepreneurial environment over, but it is also related to what Lino has mentioned, constructive failure. Right? I feel that, we feel that university has to be, I think we hear too much about success, but I think it is through failure that students actually learn the most. And if you can actually do it through an experience, all the more better. So a few months ago, I was speaking to a student who have gone to Israel, right? And he was describing to me, like, in the first 6 months, the company that he was attached to was growing extremely well. But in the last 6 months, the company collapsed totally. Right? If you were working after graduation in such a company, you would have lost your job in 1 year. But being a student on attachment, actually you experience the tribulations, of success and failure. And I think that's extremely valuable. So constructive failure is something which we hope to embed into our educational system. Now, over the years, this group of students, 2,400 of them, they have formed about 350 companies. Now, mind you that our original intention was never to get them to spin off companies. Our original intention was that we want our students to learn from failures. We want our students to to have that ability to take risks, all right, and to do things which are different, all right, to strike their own path, right? But it just happened that the students, they formed 350 companies. Some of the companies which Suzanne has mentioned, Water Roam, is social entrepreneurship that actually helps to, they have a gadget which they did as their research project in their 4th year, and it can convert unclean river water or well water into drinkable water. And for that gadget, it's about $300 US, and they are collaborating with UN organizations to help distribute these gadgets. We also have another social enterprise, a group of students who formed a company using drones to deliver medical supplies to Papua New Guinea, right? Because they don't have really good infrastructure. But we also have students who run Carousel, or rather, they are no more students, they're graduates who run Carousel, which is worth about $500 million. ShopBack, PetSnap, an IT company, worth about $300 million each. One company, Zopin, was acquired by California-based Zendesk and listed on NASDAQ. So we have about 15 of the students' company being acquired. And I think that has created a lot of excitement within the campus. Now, this is just at the undergraduate level, right? And this is what we are trying to actually now enhance. And what we are trying to do now is that every year now, we send only 300 out of the 7,000 students to these 10 locations around the world. I'm hoping in the next few years, I could send another 300, but actually to different locations. And the location that I'm actually eyeing is actually Southeast Asia. Why Southeast Asia? For a very simple reason, Southeast Asia has 650 million people. It has a burgeoning middle class. It is extremely well penetrated digitally. 330 million people in Southeast Asia has access to smartphones, right? So they are connected to the internet. We think that there's tremendous potential for this Southeast Asia. And if we can build an innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem or network in Southeast Asia in collaboration with the top universities in Southeast Asia, this is where I think my next 300 students should go, all right, in the future. So that is a very brief description of what we are doing at NUS. I think we have about 20 minutes for Q&A, and I'd like to open this up to the floor. Thank you very much. Yes, please. We have the mics coming to you.
Thank you very much for sharing. And I have a question for Hong from Microsoft. I'm very interested in what you talk about, the curriculum development from both sides, the universities and the companies. So are you trying to do it? And if you have some attempted to do it, would you please share with us your experiences? And if not, would you please tell us your considerations about the possible obstacles? Thank you.
Yeah, so when I mention the curriculum, particularly the company and the university can collaborate together, are those really talking about new technology, like for instance, like recently AI or cloud or big data? Because we need to remember, most students, after graduate from university, they work in the industry, right? And I think so this so-called apply, and how do we prepare? Of course, university will actually foster some people go through the academic track, to become researcher and faculty, but the majority of the student will actually get to become engineer or even non-engineer and then using the technology. So those kind of cutting edge technology, Microsoft always on those selective area. I mean, it's actually good that the partnership between university and company. And I think and also in China, I'm sure you come from China. This a few years ago, there's a software college, and now this so-called new engineering 新工科, well, Chinese is 新工科. How do we prepare for the technology, for the mass, not for really the advanced, those advanced academic curriculum? I mean, I think those are kind of less opportunity. But this is the area I think the company like Microsoft has a lot of unique thing to add by working with the university. So in the AI, we actually work with the 50 university. We actually announced some open source and also particularly some training certification curriculum back in this spring. And we're going to run workshop, have the professor to join to actually help us to refine the curriculum, and then we're going to roll it out with MOE and trying to train the teacher. And I think those are really a great opportunity. And the other thing is the computational thinking. We participate with a few universities worldwide trying to come up with the curriculum for how to teach the computational thinking for non-engineering majors, and that's in college, and also even for K-12. So I think there's a lot of opportunity like this, particularly in those cutting-edge industrial applied domain, and which this public sector and the private sector partnership will make a lot of sense.
Thank you. Further questions? Yes, please. Anton?
Hi, Anton Moscatelli, University of Glasgow. Suzanne Fortier pointed out very rightly that in some sectors there's real capacity issues around particular skills. So I was wondering whether there was examples from your universities of ways in which you've changed the mode of learning at postgraduate level, masters, PhDs, working with industry in very different modes of learning, much more integrated ones, and whether that's beginning to help the pipeline that Suzanne was mentioning.
Yeah. Well, I'll mention one initiative. Actually, it starts at the undergraduate level. We have a group of people called the Business Higher Education Roundtable, bringing together CEOs of major Canadian companies with heads of institutions, higher education institutions. Our goal is to have 100% of students having a work-integrated learning experience. And this is happening in various areas, fintech, mining, aerospace. So it's distributed across the main areas of the economy, the Canadian economy. But it starts at the undergraduate level. What you're talking about at the graduate level, it's been part of our environment for a long, long time, where we give graduate students an opportunity to work in company. What's also important for us is to give the experience. I think Lino talked about this very early on, and we see that the students want to be part of this world for year one in universities, whether it is working with a company or in a research lab. So they want to have a very full and broad look at these experiences, fundamental research, working in industry. So we have these now part of almost every Canadian universities are these form of learning.
Can I add just one word? We have a big problem here. We have a disparity of time scales. Industry has rapidly changing needs, but if you really want to provide fundamental education on not just a technical skill level, but educational level, then we have, of course, time constants of 3 to 10 years. And to bridge this mismatch of time constants is not easy at all. So it needs a serious dialogue between industry and academia, how to make a long-term plan to make sure that we don't invest in something that 3 years down the road will not be useful anymore.
We have actually something similar to what Suzanne had said at NUS. So we collaborate with industry in certain disciplines on industry PhDs. So these are projects where we see that there is a likelihood of translation, all right? But it doesn't happen for all. We also have collaborations, for instance, with A-STAR. A-STAR is a more application-oriented research setup in Singapore. And we collaborate with A-STAR, and A-STAR is very well connected with the industry and companies. So that also helped in terms of PhD programs through some of these collaborations. What is also important is the third stream. For the government, several years ago, came up with the idea of a corporate laboratory. All right, and this is sponsored by the National Research Foundation to foster a closer working relationship between universities and companies. So NUS and NTU, we are the key beneficiaries. So at NUS, we have collaborations with big companies like Keppel Corporation, Sembawang Corporation, Grab, Wilma, Singtel. So in these collaborations, we also, actually the PhD component and the research component is a very important component. So like for instance, Singtel, it's on information security, and a lot of the PhD students are actually attached to the Singtel corporate lab, working together with professors and also the R&D investigators from Singtel. That also provides actually a very good transition, not just a platform for collaboration, but actually a transition from academia to industry. I mean, truth is that only maybe 20% of our students would take on academic jobs. 80% actually do industry jobs. Yeah. So we have to make sure that we find avenues for them to go. All right, we are told that, any last question, really last, sorry. We're told that our time's up.
Thank you to the panel. Students of today are different than 20 years ago. Nowadays, students can find any answers from the internet. Mr. Google has been the lecturers for them. Can I ask the panel, do you think one day undergraduate classroom research is no longer relevant? Maybe undergraduate students come in, they directly start with research. Yeah. The transformation power of research. Immediately from day one, they join the university. Undergraduate, they go research either with the university, and they move on towards with the industry. Do you think that will come one day, or how soon are we moving towards that? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I can say a few words about that. It's something that interests me a lot. I do not think so. I think there's some learning, I'll call it deep learning, where you often need to be accompanied in this learning, particularly in areas where I think it may not be intuitive. What happened at the quantum level, for instance, and when you think of quantum information, quantum materials, it may be possible to learn on your own, but it's very difficult. Having a person who accompanies you in this learning, I think is very good. Also, learning is not just being a specialist in one area. It is also looking at how it connects with other knowledge. It's looking at how you interact with people. Many of our students come to universities because it's much more than just learning a particular topic. It's learning about how to be a member of society, how to be a member of a community, how to create these links. And that I'm not sure you can learn so easily from a computer.
Lino and
a very short answer. In the internet, you can find the answers to some questions. With the internet, you cannot find the real questions.
That's very good.
I actually want to expand on what Lino said. I think the learning the fact used to be we think about education, learning fact, and you are absolutely right. Right now, you actually don't need to go to classroom to learn the fact. This is why the new concept about coming from this MOOC, the so-called flip classroom. You learn the fact offline. You come to the class to ask questions, learning from peer. And I think when we talk about, I am not an educator, but I actually think the university cannot be replaced. The following reason. I think if you talk about lifelong learning, the ability, so-called the learning to learn. And a lot of time you learning to ask questions, exactly what Lino said. I think what question, if you know what the right question to ask, actually you probably find a way to learning to learn. And I think those type of things, which I think with the tutor, the professor, and also even the peer, and it's so important. And I think so this is why I think I would like to see all this transformation happen sooner, in a particular university, how we use the technology to actually start to provide really to learning to learn.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks, Xiao-Wuen. And
Yeah, I
Jianhua?
just want to add one word. The university education is very beyond the knowledge, accepted knowledge, or only the knowledge learning. It's concern all of the human beings. So I hope and I think the university will exist in the future.
This is a very provocative question, and I tell you, any vice-chancellor or any professor would want to answer this question. But, that brings us to the end of our session. We ran out of time, but thank you very much.